My true story. From Indiana. They served me last at Thanksgiving and gave me leftovers. I didn't complain, just froze their bank account. Are you here for the service staff entrance? Those were the first words I heard as I stepped through the grand doors of the Lakewood Resort. A crisp November breeze followed me in, and I balanced a small suitcase in my left hand and my homemade walnut spice cake in my right. Nobody greeted me. Nobody smiled. They just stared. No, I said, my voice steady, even as my heart nodded. I'm the mother of the man who booked this place. The concierge raised an eyebrow. He looked me up and down, my gray cardigan, my sensible walking shoes, the gentle lines etched on my face, and then he shook his head. Oh, sorry, ma'am. You're just not listed on the guest roster. I nodded slowly, pretending it did not hurt. I tucked my chin and said, That's fine. To my left, I saw Ella, my grandson's girlfriend, leaning casually against the wall. She saw me. She heard every word, but she spun away and swallowed her laughter as if I were nothing but a dull shadow in the room. Moments later, Kelsey, my daughter-in-law, glided in. She wore silk pajamas straight from a spa, her face still sporting jade eye patches, her lips painted in muted rose. Her expression was crisp, polished, unwelcoming. She saw me and stepped forward, slipping her manicured hand into mine, not in affection but in control. Helen, sweetie, she said. Her voice lined with too perfect warmth. We already told you we're going for a modern vibe this year. No need for old-fashioned food or energy. I swallowed, blinked at the jade patches and mustard. I baked a walnut spice cake, the one Thomas always loved at Thanksgiving. She looked at the cake as though it were a relic. Maybe just leave it in the staff fridge. The younger ones don't really eat dense food. Dense like my heart. When I asked her where I would stay, she offered brightly. We assumed you'd share with the help. There's a pull-out in the laundry cabin. I steadied myself. Laundry cabin? We just thought, well, it'll be cozy, she said. You're just here for one night, right? Only for the weekend. I fought to keep my voice steady. Then I heard my granddaughter Ivy giggle with her college friend. Grandma's staying here? That's a mood killer, Ivy whispered. She's going to talk about how we used to peel potatoes by hand in the blizzard of '74 again. They shared a smirk and turned away. Just then, Thomas came up behind me. He crossed his arms, looked at them both, then to me. He kissed my temple and whispered, Mom, don't make a scene. You're just here for one meal. Please don't ruin it like you ruined Dad's funeral. He didn't wait for a response. He walked away, nodding to Kelsey, who led me off toward the laundry cabin. I stood silent. I did not say one word about my feelings. I did not demand respect. I didn't argue. Inside, there was no paper keycard waiting for me. On the seating map by the fireplace, every name was written in elegant calligraphy. Thomas, Kelsey, Ivy, Ella, but not mine. I wandered to see where my seat might be. They had left me a place at the small round table beside the staff drink station behind the kitchen. I sat alone. No water was offered, no wine. I watched them seated around a long oak table overlooking the lake, raising glasses to each other, to family, and to this new chapter. Thomas toasted. Kelsey raised her eyes to mine, a glance as cold as the lake outside. And certainly not to ghosts from the past, she added, smiling at Thomas, her eyes glittering with triumph. Ghosts! That was how I felt. Forgotten, transparent, a wandering presence with no invitation to belong. I picked at the scraps someone had left. Stuffing cooled to room temperature, a few dry turkey shreds, and a scoop of broken gravy. Leftovers from leftovers. The sort of meal served to someone no one bothered to include. After a few bites, the lights dimmed, and the MC raised a microphone. He was a cousin from Kelsey's side, brought in just for show. Let's share our gratitude tonight, he said. Names matter, voices matter. We celebrate those who built this family. They went first. Ivy talked about her upcoming internship. Her friend joked about holiday cookies. Kelsey talked about the future of their new home. Thomas gave a short speech about growth and renewal. When the microphone reached me, I stood. Kelsey stepped in, her voice so quiet I could barely hear it. But the room hushed just the same. Not you. This isn't your moment, Helen. Don't embarrass us again. She must have expected me to fold. I stood frozen, tears threatening but not falling. I forced myself to sit. They rolled out the cake. Dark marble chocolate blushed with raspberry frosted words read, To the family that built this. I scanned the names. Mine was absent. Thomas raised the glass again. We wouldn't be here without each other, he declared. And certainly not because of old ghosts from the past. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about what they saw me as a specter to ignore, a sacrifice to forget. I sipped my watered down wine and smiled. I was not happy. But I knew something they did not. They were celebrating in a villa I had paid for, booked under my account. They were living in what my money bought, and soon they would feel the chill of serving me cold, because nothing freezes a family faster than a bank account that suddenly stops. And I was only just beginning. I used to be someone they listened to. For 33 years, I taught English at the local high school. I helped struggling students write their first coherent paragraph. I stayed late grading essays, led the drama club, ran parent-teacher nights, and made a home for my husband and son that was clean, warm, and full of music. We didn't have much, but we had enough, and we had love. Then cancer came like an unexpected winter, brutal, unrelenting, and colder than any wind Indiana had ever blown through our windows. My husband, Mark, was diagnosed late. I spent the better part of 2 years driving him to chemotherapy, fighting with insurance companies, juggling prescriptions, and wiping sweat from his neck at 3:00 in the morning while he asked if dying would hurt. I sold my engagement ring to cover a hospital bill. I canceled my retirement cruise. I learned to live on soup and toast. And when he passed quietly in our living room on a Tuesday morning, I didn't cry right away. I made him a promise. "I'll take care of our boy," I whispered, "even if he's a man now, even if he forgets to look back." Thomas was already married to Kelsey then. They lived 3 hours away in a shiny new subdivision where all the houses looked like they'd been printed from the same file. I thought maybe if I moved closer, we'd become what families are supposed to be. So, I packed my things and bought a modest condo 15 minutes from their place. I brought them pies. I offered to babysit. Kelsey would smile politely and say, "We're good, Helen, but thank you," before disappearing behind glass doors. Still, I believed proximity would build connection. Then came Thomas's idea, a restaurant. "It's what I've always wanted to do, Mom," he told me over coffee one afternoon. "A brunch place, classy but accessible. Kelsey's got a branding background and I've got the concept. The bank didn't approve our financing." I listened. I nodded, and then I did what mothers do. I stepped in. Thomas's credit score was dismal and Kelsey didn't qualify a loan. But I had savings. I had equity in my condo. I had the inheritance my sister left me. I had enough to co-sign to be listed as the financial guarantor to carry the weight they weren't ready to hold. "I don't want ownership," I told them. "Just let me help you get started." Thomas hugged me. Kelsey called me a lifesaver. I transferred over the first $120,000. They opened the restaurant Oak and Willow and had a line out the door the first Sunday. Local papers featured them. "Young couple brings big city brunch vibe to small-town Indiana." They smiled in every photo. My name wasn't mentioned. At first I didn't mind. I told myself it was about them, not me. But slowly, I noticed things shifting. I'd walk into the restaurant and Kelsey would look startled as though I'd walked in wearing rags. "We weren't expecting you today," she'd say, even if I had texted, "just wanted to see how things were going." "We're good, really good, but we're also really busy." They stopped inviting me to staff meetings, saying it was too much pressure for the younger employees to have family dynamics in the mix. When the restaurant expanded, they formed an LLC without me. I thought we agreed. I started to say, "It's just cleaner this way," Kelsey interrupted. "No offense, Helen, but your name complicates things on paper." My name, the one they needed to get the loan. I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. But the worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was the silence. Phone calls stopped. No one came by my condo. I got Christmas cards signed, "Love the Thompsons," without so much as a handwritten note inside, unless they needed something. Every message from Thomas started with, "Hey Mom, quick question," or "Sorry to bother you, but do you still have the login for once I didn't respond right away?" And he texted twice more in 30 minutes. "I just don't want to miss a deadline." "No, how are you, Mom?" Just the urgency of someone used to me being available like a customer service line that never closes. I watch them grow. I watch their home fill with new furniture. Their vacations get longer. Their Instagram photos become glossier. And every time I saw their faces in some article or some flyer, I wondered how two people I once loved so fiercely could look so complete without me. But I never said a word. I just smiled when they needed me, wrote the checks when asked, and reminded myself that love, real love, is patient. But even the most patient heart can learn to close its doors. I woke early that Saturday morning with an ache in my knees and a plan in my heart. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and I had promised myself I would bring something that mattered, something more than a checkbook or a signature. So I woke at 5 and made my stuffing. Not the boxed kind, not the trendy cornbread chorizo nonsense they served on Food Network. Mine was pumpkin stuffing with rosemary, sweet onion, and bits of sage sausage browned just right. A recipe passed down from my grandmother, who made it during the Depression, when nothing else could fill a belly or warm a soul. I had written it out once on a yellowing index card now tucked in my Bible. I brought it to the resort in a deep glass Pyrex dish, still warm, the top golden and crisp. I wrapped it in a towel and carried it like an offering. No one greeted me when I stepped into the main kitchen. "Just leave food there," a young server said, pointing to a steel prep table. "The chef will sort it out." "I brought it for the family," I said. "Sure," she muttered, distracted. I placed it down carefully and turned back to the dining room. Later, as I poured myself a glass of water from the side table behind the kitchen, I heard Ivy laugh. "Grandma still thinks we eat the food from the Dust Bowl," she said, scrolling through her phone. Her friend smirked. "That's so her. Probably thinks pumpkin is still a vegetable, not a vibe." I turned, wanting to say something, but I stayed quiet. I reminded myself I was here to be kind, to be invisible if necessary, but kind. The family bustled around setting up centerpieces. Someone ordered mimosas. I returned to check on the dish. That is when I saw it. A different young server, taller, bearded, maybe 22, carried my dish in both hands. The towel was gone. The stuffing had been scooped once, then left to sit. Now it was cold, congealed. He walked to the trash bin behind the kitchen wall and without a glance tilted the glass dish and scraped the contents straight into the garbage. I stood right there, frozen. He looked up, startled. "Oh, sorry. Didn't know anyone wanted it." I opened my mouth to say something. He walked away. No apology, no acknowledgement, just food wasted and memory trashed. I didn't say a word. Not to him, not to anyone. I walked back to the corner where they had placed my chair near the drink dispensers behind the floral arch, far from the oak table where the others would sit. My name wasn't even on a card. Someone had used a sticky note and scrolled Helen in what looked like eyeliner pencil. From that seat, I watched them gather Kelsey in a floor-length dress like she was at a gala, Thomas in a crisp shirt that still had the price tag string tucked in the back, Ivy in gold, Ella in velvet. Everyone shining like they were cast in a commercial. They raised glasses to each other. The MC stepped up. I didn't know who he was. Probably one of Kelsey's marketing friends, a guy with perfect teeth and no depth behind the smile. "Tonight we celebrate legacy," he said, "and we begin by honoring those who built this family. Let us hear from the pillars, the ones who matter most." A few scattered claps. Ivy spoke first about growth. Thomas gave a glowing monologue about perseverance. Then I stood. I wasn't planning to, but my body moved before my fear could stop me. The microphone was 2 seats away when Kelsey reached it first. She turned to me, smile painted with steel. "Not you, Helen," she said, low but perfectly clear. "This isn't your moment." People turned, heads swiveled. A few gasped, unsure of what they were seeing, but no one stepped in. No one said a thing. I looked at my son. He looked away. I started, but my voice caught. "Please," Kelsey said, still smiling, still holding the mic. "Let's not turn a celebration into a therapy session." I sat, I swallowed, I didn't cry. The silence inside me wasn't weak. It was roaring. Then came the cake. It was wheeled out on a cart with sparklers and fanfare. 3 tiers ribboned in chocolate and raspberry. Frosted words curled across the top. "To the family that built this." I waited for my name. It never came. Thomas took the microphone again. "We built this together," he said, "through hard work, trust, and vision." He glanced across the room, not at me, but near me, and certainly not because of old ghosts from the past weighing us down. There it was again. Ghost. Not grandmother, not teacher, not investor, not matriarch. Ghost. I looked at the cake, at the champagne bubbles rising, at the guests clapping politely. I looked at my son, at the woman he chose, at the empire they thought they'd built alone. And then I smiled. It wasn't joy, it wasn't defeat, it was knowledge, because the LLC papers, the operating account for the new brunch expansion, the line of credit that made this entire celebration possible, all still had one thing in common. My name, my signature, my protection. And I had just remembered that ghosts may be quiet, but they do not forget. That night, I sat alone in the laundry cabin. The walls were thin, the bedding was stiff, and the heater clicked like an old watch losing time. But I didn't feel cold. Not anymore. I felt something else. Something sharper than betrayal and more powerful than pity. I opened my laptop. The same old Lenovo Thomas once bought me for Mother's Day when he still remembered holidays. The screen flickered to life and I clicked through folders I hadn't opened in months, maybe years. There it was, the operating agreement for Oak and Willow Hospitality Group. My name in bold, Helen L. Martin, primary financial backer. And below it, the clause Thomas had begged me to agree to said it was just a formality. I had nodded, trusting him. It read, Guarantor retains discretionary right to revoke sponsorship in cases of financial misconduct, identity misrepresentation, or evidence of psychological harm induced by any party within the corporation. Back then, I did not think much of it. I was too busy wiring funds, talking to real estate agents, assuring banks that my name meant something. I believed I was doing what a mother should, clearing paths, building foundations, holding the weight so her child could climb. But sitting there, with the sound of party laughter still echoing from the main hall, I realized what I had really done. I had handed them the keys to the castle. I had paid the tolls, opened the gates, and then they locked the doors from the inside. I clicked through emails, searching for one in particular. It didn't take long, dated 3 years ago. Subject, Thank you, Mom. This means everything. I opened it. Mom, thank you for believing in me. I know our family has been through a lot, and I know Dad would be proud of this next step. I promise I'll never make you regret standing behind me. You're more than my mom. You're my foundation. T read it twice, then again. Each word now sounded like theater. Not love, not gratitude, just another script played out for convenience. I looked at the signed digital document attached to it. My signature at the bottom of the first capital investment transfer, $120,000, 0. Followed by 3 more deposits over the following 18 months. I scrolled further down to a PDF labeled Partnership Agreement Flagship Expansion. I clicked. There it was, the brunch project they had toasted tonight, the one with the cake, with the speeches, with no mention of me. The agreement stated clearly that the new venture's operating capital was underwritten by an umbrella line of credit secured by my financial assets, my retirement fund, my condo, my entire estate. I stared at the line. Secured by the personal collateral and legal goodwill of Helen L. Martin. Legal goodwill. I had offered them every drop of my name, and now I could take it back. My cursor hovered over the clause. Clause 14.3, Revocation of Financial Endorsement. All I needed was documentation of emotional harm. My chest tightened. I reached into my suitcase, pulled out a small notebook where I kept odd bits and personal notes. Tucked inside was a slip of paper I had nearly thrown away. One I had found in my mailbox weeks before Thanksgiving. It was a printed group text accidentally mailed to me with a promotional flyer. From Kelsey to Ivy and Thomas. Just make sure she stays out of the way this year. I'm not dealing with her crying or weird traditions again. Mom's just the wallet with a wig, Ivy had typed. No wig, just bad hair and opinions, Kelsey replied. Thomas hadn't replied, but he hadn't objected either. I scanned it into my computer, then I reached for my phone. I found the voicemail from a week prior when Thomas had called late one night. Not to say hi, not to check on me. Hey Mom, we need to add your name to a new investor presentation, just for credibility, not actual input. Don't overthink it, okay? Not actual input. I saved the recording. Then I opened my drafts folder and began typing. To whom it may concern. In accordance with Clause 14.3 of the Oak and Willow Financial Agreement, I, Helen L. Martin, am formally submitting my intention to revoke all sponsorship, endorsement, and financial backing of the entity and its affiliates effective immediately. This revocation is based on grounds of emotional mistreatment, intentional misrepresentation of involvement, and psychological harm documented through electronic and written communication. All use of my name, identity, or financial standing in promotion, guarantee, or legal agreement is henceforth unauthorized and must cease. Please see attached evidence for reference. Respectfully, Helen L. Martin. I attach the group text, the voicemail, the email from Thomas, a photograph I had taken earlier that day, my place card on a sticky note taped beside the soda dispenser while the rest of the table shimmered under golden plates and floral runners. I didn't send it, not yet. I saved it to my desktop under a new folder titled For When the Cake Crumbles. Then I shut the laptop, leaned back in the creaking cot, and stared at the ceiling. My fingers were steady. My breath was slow. I felt neither vengeance nor rage, just clarity. They could toast themselves in public. They could praise each other in speeches. They could pretend I had never built the table they now danced around. But I had the receipts. I had the name they needed. And I had the power they forgot. I held the key. I once gave I could take it back. By morning, I no longer felt like a guest. I felt like an accountant with a ledger long overdue. The rest of the family had gone off to their morning spa appointments and a private boat tour Thomas had arranged as a Thanksgiving detox. I stayed behind in the laundry cabin. The linens still smelled faintly of bleach. It suited me just fine. I needed silence for what I was about to do. I opened my laptop, breathed in deeply, and reviewed everything one more time. The clause, the evidence, the draft letter. Then I opened a new email to commercial banking. Subject: immediate revocation of financial endorsement. Evident logic. I wrote slowly with intention. To whom it may concern. This is a formal notice to revoke all financial support, sponsorship, and endorsement related to the Project Oak and Willow Brunch expansion. Project code XYZ, including but not limited to any lines of credit, lease agreements, and vendor accounts established in association with my legal and financial identity. Effective immediately, I withdraw all authorization for the use of my name, assets, or reputation as security or collateral. Basis for this revocation includes misrepresentation of my involvement in corporate governance, emotional and psychological mistreatment by affiliated individuals, exploitation of familial ties for deceptive financial gain. Then I attached the files. First the audio. It was short, less than 10 seconds, but sharp as a blade. Kelsey's voice, flippant and cruel. She's just the checkbook with wrinkles. She won't say no. She never does. It was recorded during one of their staff meetings. A young hostess had heard it and sent it to me weeks ago. She didn't like how they spoke about me. Said she was raised better. I added the video clip next. A blurry recording taken by one of the kitchen staff, showing me sitting alone at the folding table behind the wine cooler, quietly chewing on cold turkey and congealed stuffing while the rest of the family dined under chandeliers. Then I attached a photo, my pumpkin stuffing being dumped into a trash bin by a server. Mid-shift, the timestamp matched Thanksgiving afternoon. The dish still bore my name scribbled on masking tape. All 3 pieces of evidence were ugly. None of them were lies. I ended the email simply. I trusted my family to honor my name. Instead, they used it. I am no longer their guarantor. Respectfully, Helen L. Martin. And then I hit send. It didn't take long. Within the hour, I received an automated confirmation. A compliance officer would contact me shortly. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Mrs. Martin, this is Amy Travers from Lakeshore Trust. We've reviewed your documentation. Based on the evidence provided and the terms of your original guarantor agreement, we've initiated an immediate suspension of all financial activity tied to Project XYZ and its subsidiaries. The accounts are now frozen pending internal review and legal evaluation. She paused. I have to ask, ma'am, do you anticipate your family contesting this decision? I answered calmly. I expect they'll be furious, but I also expect they won't find a single lie in what I've said. There was a moment of respectful silence on the other end. Well then, you've handled this with remarkable clarity. No emotion showed on my face. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. But deep inside, I felt the first taste of a different kind of warmth. Not joy, not revenge, but something truer. Justice. Let them sip champagne. Let them sail around the lake with rented joy. Because when they returned, they'd find out what it felt like when the tap runs dry and the faucet they never thanked was gone. It did not take long. By Sunday morning, the cracks were showing. I was sitting by the window of my condo, a warm mug of black tea in my hands, watching the last leaves fall from the maple tree across the parking lot. The phone buzzed twice. 3 times, I ignored it. I had already done what needed to be done. Let silence answer them now. But by afternoon, it was no longer silence. It was noise. I received a text from a neighbor's teenage daughter, an accidental message meant for a friend, with a link to a TikTok video attached, bitter brunch baby posted 5 hours ago. Caption: when you work a 14-hour holiday shift and your paycheck bounces because your boss's MEL snapped. The video opened on a waitress in her uniform sitting on a curb outside Oak and Willow holding an empty coffee cup. She froze the whole thing, the girl said to the camera, laughing bitterly. Apparently, Grandma funded everything and got sick of being treated like furniture, so now we don't get paid until the lawyer sorted out. Happy Thanksgiving, I guess. The comments rolled fast. I watched the video twice. It felt surreal. My life, my pain reduced to pixels and punchlines. But I did not flinch. This was not revenge. It was revelation. I was no longer the invisible one. I was being seen, if not by my family, then by the world that watched them. An hour later, Thomas called. His name lit up my screen. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered, "Mom, what the hell did you do?" He snapped, skipping even a greeting. "You ruined everything." There was no trace of the boy I raised, no softness, just panic wrapped in entitlement. "I revoked the sponsorship," I said quietly, as was my right. "Do you even know what that means?" he shouted. "Payroll didn't go through. Our supplier pulled out. The expansion team is threatening to sue." I could hear Kelsey in the background, her voice high-pitched and frantic, doors slamming, something breaking. "You didn't just freeze money, Mom. You killed a brand." "No," I said gently. "I just stopped pretending I wasn't the one keeping it all together." He was silent for a second, then he scoffed. "This is insane. You're punishing us because you didn't get a seat at dinner." I felt a strange calm wash over me. "No," I said. "I'm holding you accountable because you forgot I was never just a seat at your table. I was the table." He muttered something under his breath, then raised his voice again. "This isn't how families work, Mom." "I agree," I said. "Families do not lie, exclude, or humiliate each other. They do not use one another as stepping stones." The line was quiet. Then he hung up. I sat there for a long time, tea gone cold in my hand, and stared out the window. The emails came next from investors, from partners, from a local food journalist who had picked up the story and wanted a quote. Apparently, the brunch chain that redefined small-town hospitality was now under financial investigation. And the woman who once paid for everyone else's dreams was finally speaking up. But I did not give statements. I did not post videos. I simply watched as the thing they'd built without me began to fall under the weight of everything they had buried. Not because I had pushed, but because I had stepped aside and let the truth come through. The conference room was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of paper and panic. I had not worn anything flashy, just a gray sweater, black slacks, and the locket Mark gave me on our 15th anniversary. I did not come to impress. I came to finalize. Two men in suits sat at one end of the table, representatives from Lakeshore Trust. My attorney, Miss Davidson, a sharp woman with a quiet voice and ruthless paperwork, sat beside me. Across from us sat Thomas and Kelsey. Their faces were pale, drawn. Kelsey's hair was pulled too tight, and Thomas kept fiddling with a pen like it might save him from drowning. "Mrs. Martin," said Mr. Covington from the bank, glancing at the documents in front of him. "We've reviewed your revocation request. Before we move forward, we're obligated to provide the named parties a chance to respond." I nodded. "Of course," Thomas leaned in. "This has gotten way out of hand." "Mom, can we just please," I said softly. "Let me speak first." The room fell silent. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it flat on the table. Inside were printed screenshots, emails, a notarized transcription of Kelsey's voice message, and the still frame of me sitting behind the kitchen door with a plate of discarded turkey. "They took my name off the guest list," I said, voice even, eyes steady. "So, I took theirs off the account." Kelsey let out a sharp breath. "That's not fair. You know that night was—" I raised a hand. "No one forced you to exclude me. No one told you to throw my food away. No one told you to refer to me as a checkbook with wrinkles." The banker's face twitched. "I gave you my name," I continued. "I gave you my savings. I signed over my retirement, my condo equity, even my emergency fund for dental work, all so you could build something you told me would carry our family forward." Kelsey spoke again, voice trembling now. "We were stressed. We were hosting. We didn't mean to be cruel." I turned to her, my tone still soft, but edged now with clarity. "You served me cold food," I said. "I served you consequences." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Mr. Covington cleared his throat. "Legally, Mrs. Martin retains the right to revoke support if conditions in the agreement are violated. Based on the documentation, it appears that standard has been met," Miss Davidson added. "And due to the personal nature of the mistreatment and public exposure, we are also requesting a formal restraining order against use of her name or likeness in any further promotional materials." Thomas slammed the pen onto the table. So that's it. You get to blow up our lives and walk away. I looked at him, really looked. At the boy I raised, the man who once cried when his father couldn't make it to his first baseball game, the man who no longer remembered birthdays or brought me flowers on Sundays. No, I said. I didn't blow anything up. I just stopped standing under the beams while you chipped away at the foundation. He turned to Kelsey, who looked more shell than woman now. Say something, he whispered. She didn't. I could see in her eyes she finally understood what she had lost. Not the money, the protection, the shield, the silent approval of the woman who had made their kingdom possible. I'm not angry, I said, and meant it. I'm not here for vengeance. I'm here to reclaim what I gave in good faith and received back in humiliation. Mr. Coynton nodded, shuffling the papers together. We'll move forward with the freeze. All credit lines are suspended. Assets will remain locked until a new guarantor is approved and Mrs. Martin's name is legally removed from all contracts. Miss Davidson gathered her files and stood. I did the same, but before I reached the door, Kelsey stood too. Please, she said, eyes wet. Just please. That night was a mistake. We were overwhelmed. I never meant I looked at her. You meant it, I said. You just didn't think it would cost you anything. And then I walked out, not in anger, but with the peace of someone who knew her. Silence had finally spoken, louder than any scream. They never returned the chair. At the end of that long Thanksgiving table, the one dressed in white linen, wrapped in golden ribbons, surrounded by laughter not meant for me, there had been one empty seat, mine, and now it had become a symbol. A reporter from the Indiana Register was the first to call. A young woman named Elena, maybe 30, her voice steady but reverent. We've been following the financial inquiry around Oak and Willow, she said. But now people are talking about the woman behind the name, the one they tried to erase. I did not think I had anything to say, but I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. She brought coffee, a notebook, and the kind of attention I hadn't received from my own children in years. She asked questions I hadn't expected. What was it like to sign your name over to something you believed in? What made you finally say enough? And then quietly, do you think they ever really saw you? I answered as plainly as I could. I do not think they ever looked. The article went viral by Monday. She funded the future, then took it back. That was the headline. Beneath it, a photo of me sitting on the cafe patio, tea in hand, wedding ring still on my finger. Even though Mark had been gone 6 years, they didn't Photoshop a thing. Not the wrinkles, not the softness of my arms, not the age in my eyes. And yet, I looked strong. Within days, my inbox filled. Strangers, hundreds of them. Messages from women who said they had once kept quiet at dinner tables, who had signed checks but never been invited to boardrooms, who were asked to sit in corners and smile as others took credit for their sacrifices. One woman wrote, "You reminded me that silence can have structure, and sometimes the most powerful words we say are the ones we sign on legal documents." Another, "My daughter-in-law hasn't spoken to me in months, but I read your story and for the first time I don't feel ashamed. I feel visible." An invitation arrived in the mail, heavy and cream-colored. You are cordially invited to speak at the 4th Annual Women Over 65 in Power Leadership Summit hosted in Chicago. IIL keynote topic. When they forget your worth, remind them who paid the bill. I laughed when I read that, not because it was funny, but because it was true. At the summit, I stood in a modest blazer, facing a room of women whose hair had grayed, whose voices had softened, but whose spines remained unbreakable. I told them the story of the empty chair. I told them about the guest list, about the plate of food in the kitchen, about the cake. I told them how my son once said I was just here for one meal and how that was the last time I ever let someone else define what I was worth. The crowd didn't applaud loudly. They rose slowly, silently. A standing ovation in a room full of women who had spent lifetimes being seated last. They knew. Later that night, I sat alone in my hotel room reading the handwritten letters tucked into my purse by other attendees. One said, "They gave you cold food, but you gave us fire. Thank you." Another, "You were the quiet in the room they underestimated, but when you moved, the whole table shook." I turned to the window. Snow had started falling over the city, and I whispered to no one in particular. They thought silence was surrender. It was just the inhale before the strike. Weeks passed. Oak and Willow folded. The expansion project dissolved. Their brunch dreams turned bitter. I never spoke to Thomas again. He sent one email, a hollow apology followed by a request for reconsideration. I deleted it. Not out of anger, out of peace. Peace does not beg. Peace does not reopen old doors. Kelsey, to her credit, sent a letter. It came on thick paper, expensive perfumed. Helen, you don't owe me forgiveness, but I owe you acknowledgement. I see now what you did and what you endured. You were never the checkbook. You were the foundation. I am sorry I realized it too late. K. I did not reply. Not because I wished her harm, but because I wished her growth. Let that be enough. And now when people speak of me, if they do, it is not with pity. It is with pause. Because in a world that often treats aging as a racer, I made myself legible again, not by shouting, but by removing what was never appreciated. I do not sit at that table anymore. I do not long for the invitation that never came, because the chair they left empty for me was the chair I once paid for, so all of them could sit. And this time I pulled that chair away and left them standing. If this story stirred something deep in you, if it reminded you of a silence you once held, or a strength you forgot you had, then you're not alone. Every chair you were denied, every room you were left out of, every time they called you just you were more,